I wasn't supposed to find out. Not like that. Not through a half-finished text and a strange silence on the other end of the phone. But that's how it started, a quiet, ordinary Thursday that decided to rearrange everything I thought I understood about trust, friendship, and the thin line between curiosity and betrayal. My name's Elena. I'm 45, married for 18 years, and I've stopped pretending marriage feels the same after a decade. There's comfort, yes, routines, groceries, the gentle chaos of shared space. But sometimes comfort starts to feel like dust. And then there's Ryan, my husband's friend, or at least that's how I used to describe him. 27, awkward in the way people are when they haven't decided who they're going to be yet. He works in design, comes over sometimes to help my husband fix things around the house. I never thought much of it until I did. The other name in this story is Nora, my closest friend. We met long before either of us got married. She's one of those people who laughs too loud, who makes every room feel warmer just by being in it. Her husband, Mark, is quieter, polite smiles, long pauses, a man who watches more than he speaks. It was Nora who first mentioned it, half joking, that our husbands should meet Ryan. They get along, she said, stirring her coffee like it was nothing. I nodded. I didn't think she meant alone. But a few weeks later, the messages started to feel off. My husband would come home later than usual, say he'd been with Ryan. Ryan would text, saying he'd been out with Mark. At first, I brushed it off. People mix up details, right? Still, something about it didn't sit right. Then last night, as I was clearing the table, my phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. Just one line. He told me not to say anything. And before I could even ask who, the chat disappeared. Deleted. The kitchen light hummed. The air suddenly too still. I stared at my reflection in the dark window, my own face looking back, older, sharper, confused. That's when my husband walked in, smiling, casual, carrying the smell of rain and someone else's cologne. He kissed me on the cheek, asked what was for dinner. And just like that, everything went silent inside me. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. But the next morning, when Nora called, her voice too bright, too careful, and said, "Hey, can we talk about something weird?" I knew. Whatever our husbands and Ryan had been doing behind our backs wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was the beginning of something neither of us had agreed to. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to find out the truth or keep pretending I didn't already know. When Nora called that morning, I could tell right away something was off. Her voice was soft in that way people sound when they're trying to pretend they're not scared. "Hey," she said. "You busy?" "Just coffee." I answered, though my cup had gone cold half an hour ago. She hesitated. "Can I come over?" By the time she arrived, the rain had already started, that slow, gray kind that makes everything feel heavier. She didn't even take off her coat when she sat down at the table. For a second, neither of us spoke. Just the sound of the rain ticking against the window. Finally, she said, "Mark's been acting strange." That made me look up. "Strange how?" She gave a small, nervous laugh. "He's secretive now. He takes his phone everywhere. And last week, he told me he was meeting Ryan. Not your husband, but when I asked what for, he just said it was nothing serious." Ryan again. That name was starting to echo in all the wrong ways. I tried to stay calm, to sound casual. "Funny," I said, "because my husband said he was with Ryan that same night." Nora blinked, then frowned. "Wait, both of them?" We sat there, piecing together small things that hadn't made sense before. The late texts, the sudden work calls, the mismatched details. Little cracks forming in the stories they told us. It didn't add up, and the more we tried to make it make sense, the less it did. Our friendship had always been built on small truths, shared recipes, bad advice, too much coffee. But that morning, it felt like we were holding something fragile, like glass that might shatter if we looked too closely. Outside, the rain thickened. Nora leaned forward, lowering her voice. "What if they're hiding something from us?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to believe the version of life where people tell the truth. But that text, he told me not to say anything, kept replaying in my head like a loop I couldn't turn off. Still, I smiled at her. "Let's not jump to conclusions," I said. But even as I said it, I knew we already had. Later, after she left, I walked through the house, tracing the ordinary things that suddenly didn't feel ordinary anymore. His jacket on the chair, the half-read book on the nightstand, the quiet hum of the fridge. Everything looked the same, but I didn't trust any of it. And when I checked my phone again, that empty chat with Ryan's still gone. I realized what scared me most wasn't the idea that my husband might be lying. It was the thought that Ryan might not be lying anymore. The following week stretched like a question that no one wanted to answer. My husband acted normal, or maybe too normal. He smiled more, asked about my day, even offered to cook one evening. It should have felt comforting, but instead, it felt rehearsed. Nora and I were texting constantly by then, trading scraps of information like detectives who didn't quite know what they were solving. She'd found a receipt in Mark's jacket. Dinner for two, not at any place they'd ever been together. I tried to laugh it off, but when she sent me the date, my chest tightened. That was the same night my husband said he was working late with Ryan. Coincidence, maybe, but the air between what was said and what wasn't had started to hum with something neither of us could ignore. A few days later, I ran into Ryan unexpectedly, outside a cafe downtown. He looked startled to see me, hands shoved deep into his pockets, his usual easy smile nowhere in sight. "Elena," he said, voice lower than usual. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Yeah," I answered. "Me neither." For a moment, it felt like time folded in on itself. Just the sound of passing cars, the faint smell of rain still hanging in the air. I wanted to ask. I wanted to say, "What did you mean by that text? Who told you not to say anything?" But instead, I just said, "You've been busy, huh?" He looked away, nodded once. "Yeah, things got complicated." His hands tightened in his pockets, and I noticed the faint tremor in his jaw, like he was holding back words he couldn't trust himself to speak. Before I could say anything else, he muttered, "I should go," and walked off, disappearing into the crowd before I could stop him. That night, I told Nora. She went quiet for a long time, then whispered, "Elena, I think Mark's lying to me too. He said he's been with Ryan again. Same nights your husband's gone." We both laughed, though it wasn't funny. Just that helpless kind of laugh people use when the truth feels too close. Later, lying in bed beside my husband, I stared at the ceiling, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand, a new message. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. "You deserve to know what's going on." The room seemed to shrink around me. I sat up slowly, fingers trembling as I read the message again. No sender, no context, just that one line. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted the answer, or if I was finally ready to stop pretending I didn't already have it. I didn't reply to the message right away. I must have read it 20 times before I even breathed properly again. "You deserve to know what's going on." It sat there like a heartbeat on my screen, steady, waiting. I didn't show it to my husband. Instead, I sent it to Nora with one simple line. "Did you get this too?" She didn't answer for nearly an hour. When she finally did, her reply made the room spin. "Yes." Same words, different number. By then, the air between us and our husbands had thickened into something unspoken but alive. They still smiled, still made plans, but their eyes darted too quickly. Every laugh felt a second too late, every excuse too neat. That Friday, Nora and I decided to meet in person again. Neutral Ground, the cafe downtown where Ryan used to sit with his laptop for hours. She looked tired. I probably did too. "They're hiding something," she said softly, stirring her tea though it had already gone cold. "But what if it's not what we think?" I wanted to believe that. I really did. But the longer this went on, the more it felt like a story we weren't being told. "I don't even know who to ask anymore," I said. "Ryan won't talk to me. My husband acts like everything's fine. And that text means someone wants us to find out," she finished. For a moment, we just sat there listening to the hum of people talking around us. Then Nora pulled something from her bag, a folded piece of paper. "Mark left this in his jacket," she said. "It's an address." I took it, smoothing it open. A small studio on the edge of town. Not a restaurant, not an office. Just an address. We stared at it like it might explain everything. "What if we go there?" she asked. It was reckless, unplanned. But curiosity, once it starts, doesn't stop. That evening, I told my husband I had dinner with Nora. He smiled, kissed me, said, "Have fun." His phone buzzed right after I left. I caught the glow of Ryan's name before the screen went dark again. By the time Nora and I pulled up outside the studio, the sky had turned a dull violet. Only one light glowed inside. She looked at me. We knocked. My hands were shaking when I reached for the door. Through the glass, I saw movement, two shadows standing too close. One of them laughed, low and familiar. And just before I pushed the door open, I heard my husband's voice. I didn't mean to open the door, it just happened. My hand moved before my mind could catch up. The studio was dim, warm light spilling across sketches, papers, and a half-finished model of something that looked like a small exhibition display. My husband turned first, his face draining of color. Next to him stood Ryan. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the rain starting again outside, soft and steady, like a secret trying to cover itself. "Elena," he said finally, "were you? I could ask you the same thing." I cut in, my voice low, unsteady. "What is this? Why are you two meeting here?" Ryan looked down, rubbing the back of his neck. My husband took a breath, too long, too careful, and said, "It's not what you think." Nora stepped in behind me, her eyes scanning the room. "Then please," she said quietly, "tell us what it is." They exchanged a look, quick, loaded. My stomach twisted. Finally, Ryan spoke. "We were trying to surprise you." It was almost laughable how unbelievable that sounded. But there was something in his voice, guilt, maybe, or exhaustion, that stopped me from dismissing it completely. My husband sighed, rubbing his temple. "Ryan's been helping me design something for you. For both of you, actually. An anniversary surprise. A joint project." He pointed toward the display on the table. At first, I didn't understand. Then I saw the small details, the photos, the sketches. It was a concept for a community art event, something Nora and I had once talked about starting years ago. It didn't make sense. "You went behind our backs for this," Nora said. "You couldn't just tell us?" "It was supposed to be a good thing," my husband said. "You've both been distant. We thought maybe I cut in. "Since when do you and Ryan keep secrets together?" That landed heavier than I expected. Ryan shifted, his jaw tightening. "I didn't mean for it to look like this," he said. "It got complicated when Mark found out." "Mark?" Nora whispered. Ryan nodded. "He was supposed to help too. But then, he didn't want you knowing he'd been talking to your husband. He thought you'd think something was wrong." The air seemed to collapse in on itself. So that's why the stories didn't line up. They'd been tangled in a mess of crossed intentions and half-kept secrets. But even as they tried to explain, something still didn't feel right. I looked closer at the sketches. One corner of the board was covered, a paper pinned hastily over another drawing. I pulled it back before anyone could stop me. Underneath was a list of names, investors, partners, and one name circled twice, Nora's husband, Mark. I looked up slowly. "Then tell me," I said, "if this is just a project, why does it look like Mark's the one running it?" No one answered. And in the silence that followed, I realized this wasn't about friendship anymore. It was about something bigger, something none of them wanted me to see. The room went completely still. My husband stared at the paper I just uncovered as if he didn't recognize it. Ryan looked pale, like he wanted to disappear. "Why is Mark's name here?" I asked again, louder this time. Nora stepped closer, her face tightening. "You told us this was our idea, our project. Why is my husband the one in charge?" Ryan finally spoke, voice rough. "Because he funded it. He wanted to surprise you both, but he didn't tell anyone how far he'd gone. We thought we could fix it before it got messy." "Messy?" Nora's laugh was short, sharp. "You think lying to us for weeks isn't messy?" My husband reached out, his hand hovering near mine. "Elena, please. I didn't mean for this to look secretive. Mark said if we told you, it would ruin the surprise. He was going to announce it this weekend." It sounded almost reasonable, but something inside me cracked. "You had every chance to tell me," I said quietly. "Every single night you came home, you looked me in the eye and said nothing." His face fell. The kind of silence that follows truth filled the room. Heavy, final. Nora took the paper from my hand, scanning it again. "Then where is he?" she asked suddenly. "If Mark started all this, why isn't he here?" Ryan hesitated. "He was supposed to meet us tonight." That landed like a stone in my chest. We all turned toward the door at once, expecting it to open. for Mark to walk in and fix the whole thing with one simple explanation. But it never happened. Instead, my phone buzzed again. One new message. Same unknown number. Don't trust what they tell you. He's not who you think. My hand went cold. I turned the screen toward the others. Who sent this? Ryan's eyes widened. You got another one? You knew about this? He swallowed. I thought it was Mark. He sent me the same message last week. The room pulsed with confusion, fear, realization. My husband stepped back, as if a line had been drawn between all of us. Nora's voice trembled. Then where is he? No one had an answer. Outside, thunder cracked across the sky, shaking the windows. And for the first time, I realized whatever we thought we were uncovering wasn't finished. Maybe it hadn't even started. We waited for Mark to show up that night, but he never did. The rain didn't stop until morning, and by then, something between the four of us had broken beyond repair. The next day, Nora called him again and again. No answer. Finally, she drove to his office. It was closed. The only thing waiting for her, there was a sealed envelope with her name written on it. Inside was a letter, short, almost too careful in its wording. Mark wrote that he'd taken a step back from the project because it had grown more complicated than he ever intended. He'd gone out of town to clear his head, he said. No return date. No explanation. Nora read it twice, then handed it to me without a word. By then, the so-called project was already unraveling. Without Mark, there was no funding. My husband and Ryan admitted they tried to keep it alive because they thought it might bring some light back into our lives. There's ours all tangled together. But good intentions built on half-truths rarely survive. For a while, none of us spoke. Nora stopped coming by. My husband and I moved around each other like quiet ghosts, polite but distant. Ryan sent one last message. I'm sorry for all of it, before deleting his account. It should have ended there. Maybe it did in some ways. But the strange thing about secrets is that once they've been spoken aloud, they don't vanish, they echo. Weeks later, Nora and I met again at that same cafe. She looked tired but softer somehow. He's not coming back, she said, staring out the window. I think I already knew that. I nodded. Some people leave long before they actually go. We sat there in silence for a while, just two women who had trusted too easily, loved too deeply, and found themselves standing in the ruins of good intentions. When we finally stood to leave, she smiled faintly. At least we know now, she said. Outside, the city looked different, quieter but not colder. I walked home under a sky still heavy with gray, thinking about how easily people hide behind kindness, how secrets grow not out of cruelty but fear. That night, I made dinner for two. My husband joined me. We ate quietly, no lies, no pretending, just the small sound of forks on plates, the quiet rhythm of starting over. And for the first time in a long time, the silence between us didn't feel empty. It felt honest.